Hello everyone. Once again, I have allowed a huge gap in between my videos, and to be honest, I've just been hiding. There's no excuse. I have been continuing to do in the authors training school writing course that I was doing. We just completed the middle seminar, which was over Zoom for 2 weeks last week. I haven't written anything in my book. I have been doing my homework last minute. I was sick this past week. The family I'm staying with, we all ended up getting a really bad case. I think it was strep throat. That's what my friends had. She got an antibiotic. I didn't because I didn't have money to go to a doctor. But I mentioned it to my brother, and he was very kind, and he sent me a donation to go see a doctor. But by the time I went, the infection was already over. So I didn't get an antibiotic, but hey, it was a respiratory infection. I get those a lot. So still trying to sort out my financial difficulties. I'm not sure what's going on with the donations that I usually receive. So yeah, I've just been so preoccupied with money. Like, I have enough to pay the rent where I'm staying and buy groceries, because luckily groceries are very inexpensive in the UK and Europe. And then I also eat with my friends sometimes, and I can go out and get a cup of coffee. And like I said, my brother just sent me a very nice donation. So that was really, really, really kind, and such a blessing to receive that from my big brother. Yeah. Just thinking about his struggles and a lot about my family. Researching on the book that I'm writing has caused me to revisit some dark places in my own life, in my past. A lot of the trauma and everything. I know I said that I would talk more about the depression that I struggle with, and quite frankly, that's the reason why I haven't been posting videos or anything. I mean, I can seem like I'm doing okay, but at the end of the day, and I am doing okay, I just don't have a lot to do right now outside the writing course. So I am still here in Berlin. I'm going to apply to staff here. I've actually already begun the process, and hopefully the goal is to work with the inner city circle group, working with street ministries and homeless and stuff like that, because those kind of things actually give me life, and it would be really good to get back into that. Unfortunately, before I can do that, I have to leave the country and return. I've got to go back to the States to do some fundraising, so I do plan to be back in the States about May through July 2023. And then return to Berlin late July, August, early August to staff here. Yeah, I suppose it's kind of interesting because the main character in my story, I guess when my depression surfaced, I realized that I should probably include that inside her story. I mean, she doesn't witness, I mean, she comes from a broken background, and she comes from a lot of people turning their backs on her. Like, we're talking about church, family, friends, the people that really matter. And I had been debating, I thought maybe she would just be a Christian who's struggling, but I realized, no, I had to consider my own self, because a lot of my own experience is being poured into this character. And I had the realization that if my mother had died when I was younger instead of when I was 30, I would have left the church. At that point in my life, I was just so hurt and so angry at all the people that I should have relied on to be there for us, turning their backs on us, that I would have completely left the church at that point. I had not yet grown in forgiveness and tolerance and understanding, and seeking to understand why people do what they do. And so I realized that my character in this book, she's going to be someone who's walked away from the church, someone who is hurting from all that damage. And it made me realize that I'm going to have to take a lot more in-depth look, not just into myself, but into other people and their struggles and what are the results. I'm having to really examine what is life like when you choose to walk away from the faith that you know is real, but you just can't live with it anymore. And I suppose that kind of looking to these places and not having a lot of life-giving things happening in my life to help me focus on, I started kind of slipping back into my own depression and kind of like, oh. And it reminded also that this whole book is also about choice. Because, yeah, sure, bad things happen to us and we have strongholds, we may have illnesses and all these other kind of things, but we have a choice how we're going to respond to those things. So when my depression rises, I know I need to be intentional to go out and take a walk. I know I need to find things to preoccupy myself. I know I need to be reading my Bible more and be focused on thankfulness and gratitude rather than on everything that's going wrong. And I can argue, well, I'm having financial troubles. Well, I got sick. Well, I'm a little bit overwhelmed. Oh, I'm suffering writer's block and all these other kind of things. And you know what? They're just excuses. They're real. I'm not saying it's not real, but at the end of the day, how about I focus on being thankful? Yeah, sure, I'm not getting in as much money as I normally do for whatever reason, but I'm getting in enough. I'm able to cover the rent where I'm staying. I'm able to have food. I'm able to go out to the coffee house sometimes because I work better being at a cafe or someplace like that than I do just sitting at home. I've met several people because I'm a people person, and yeah, sure, I'm in Berlin where it's German, and but you know, it's like through translation apps, or sometimes usually most people speak English in the younger generation. I'm meeting friends, talking about the Lord. I've found a really great church, Mosaic Church here. Already making connections with people. The other volunteers in this area, we've made friends. I have clothes on my back. I'm fundraising to go back to the States, and I know that money's going to come in. I have the Lord on my side. I mean, again, I was sick and I didn't get to a doctor. I had an upper respiratory infection and I still recovered without antibiotics. And then on top of it, I have an older brother who was like, when I reached out to him, he answered the call. So it's the same thing. I reach out to people and people send me money to help me out. I'm not without friends. I'm not without hope. I'm not without circumstance. So instead of focusing on the lack of what I have, I should be thankful for what I do have and focus on that. That is a choice. And I've had to repent to the Lord and ask him to forgive me for not focusing on that. And I also have so many other things to be thankful for. When I came here, I didn't have a proper winter coat because the one that I had I didn't really worry about it too much when I was in England because I didn't travel very much offside of our base during the wintertime, except for to go to a few places and, you know, I'd take a taxi or something if it was too far. And here in Berlin, I do a lot of walking. So I really needed a proper winter coat, but I didn't have the money for one. I have 3 now that we got out of the Blessing Boutique, and they're not my favorite fashion. There's one that's a cream colored, and the way it fits, it's so puffy. I look like a cotton ball. But, you know, hey, I have 3 coats to keep me warm. I am definitely not starving. I'm actually still thinking I need to be careful how much I eat because I have a tendency to overeat. So I'm not hungry, starving, or anything like that. I'm not lacking. I'm not lacking in anything. And I want to be thankful to the Lord that I have a place to stay, that I've always had a place to stay. I've always had plenty to eat. I always have all the clothes I need when I need them. I was even needing a new backpack. My backpack was just seeing the end of its day, and I could have bought one a while back. I just was procrastinating because I kind of got used to this backpack. I've had it for 5 years. But finally I was like, Lord, I need a new backpack. And then boom, right there in the Blessing Boutique is this amazing waterproof backpack. the provisions keep coming in. So I do need prayer, because as I am going into this book, I am having to get into some darker thoughts and just revisit some old emotions, like things that I've overcome, things that I don't feel anymore. But I have to be careful not to get stuck in those. I do need to do it for the sake of the character, for her development, as she goes through her own trials and everything. But I've also got to be careful for my own mental health, that I don't slide back into that rhythm. So it's kind of interesting taking this journey. And I know I talked about that I found a whole bunch of symbolism in the chapters and stuff. I still have it written down. I really haven't revisited it since I mentioned it last time. I need to go back and look at it again. It was so alive to me at the time because I was focusing on more positive things, and then I just... So yeah, these are not where I want my videos to be all the time, but at the same time I need to be vulnerable, and let's talk about mental health. And I do have a friend, a couple of friends actually, who have their own podcast on Spotify talking about overcoming their mental health issues. And she'd invited me a long time ago to speak, and I said, okay, I think I might be ready to talk a little bit about mental health. But again, in relation to the book, that, you know, we have our struggles, we have our trials. They're real, they're valid. But we can choose how we respond to it. Like, I mean, you know, whenever we see people on America's Got Talent, Britain's Got Talent, and they come up there and they sing, and then you find out that they or their loved ones is fighting cancer or something like that. And they just get up there and they inspire you so much because they've made a choice not to be overcome by their circumstances, but to overcome it with love and joy. And that's what I want to do too. And that's a choice that we have to make. And that's going to be a big part of this book. So here's me sending out this video on one take. I'm not going to promise two, but I am going to try to at least get out one every couple of weeks maximum, but I'll try to get back to doing at least one a week. But at maximum 2 weeks. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of grace on that too. I may have set the bar way too high for myself, unrealistically, to get started with this. But yeah, so if you will give me grace, and if you will pray for me and give me your encouragement too, as I continue on this journey with my character and getting her started. And please pray for writer's block to lift, so that way I can move forward. So thank you, and God bless.